What is your go-to pattern for an easy, quick quilt? How about when you want to use charm squares? Have you ever wondered about what pattern to use for your charm squares without always using the same one? I want to share my ideas with you. I have my favorite charm square quilt patterns I want to share, and it's going to make it so much easier for you because there's quite a variety that you can choose from. I'm Leah Louise from Inspired Quilting by Leah Louise, and I want to share my 9 creative charm square quilts that I use when I want to make a quilt. Now, there's lots of patterns and tutorials down below in the description, so don't miss any of them. Most of them are free printables. So I want you to see every one of them. But right now, we need to take a look at some quilt ideas. Let's get started. Oh, and get your charm squares. There is so much that we can do with charm squares. They're incredibly versatile. I want to show you from the beginning, from the easy steps, how to make a quilt with minimal time and effort, and then we'll progress on to some other ideas. But this first one is probably one of my absolute favorites. It's just a 4-patch, and that's all that it is. And I'm going to show you how that works. Now, when I work with colors, these are batiks that I pulled, and I'm going kind of monochromatic just to give you an idea of how this works. And then you can incorporate it with anything that you have, any particular collections or fat quarters or precuts that you have, you can use this. The first thing you do is you want to divide dark, medium, and light. Now, I didn't have a lot of the lights, but I did go with some low volume because I really like the look of this against darker fabrics. It creates a wonderful contrast. And you can also use solids, but I really like that little bit of pattern that's in a low volume that just creates so much interest in the background. And I think that enhances any quilt. So that's what I'm working with. And what we're going to do is we'll use our light fabrics as a highlight, our dark fabrics as an accent, and then our medium fabrics are going to be the primary color. So we're going to create a 4-patch with 1 highlight, 1 accent, and 2 of our focal fabrics. And this is going to create a really well-balanced block that we can then put together into a larger quilt, and it's going to work wonderfully, and it's going to create balance throughout your entire quilt. So I pulled a dark one for each of these, and now what I want to do is pull some of the medium colors. And so I'm just going to start with some different colors. I like this there because that's, see, in the mediums there's light and dark. So I'm going to put the darker mediums with the darker backgrounds. That's just sort of where I start. And this is kind of an interesting, this is one of the few batiks in here, but I like this. That's just going to create a lot of great interest, and it works well with this fabric. Now, this is very tealy looking, and so I want to get something on the teal side and maybe with a bit of the green. I saw something in here. There we go. These are the ones that have that turquoise color that's in this block. So when you can bring in a color in another block together, you're going to get a really nice balanced 4-patch because they're going to work so well together. Now, I do need a second focal fabric in order to pull this together. So let's see what I have. I like this one, and this one needs a little bit more color because these both are on the darker side and in color. This I like. This has a lot of contrast, as does this, and even this one does. So I'm going to put that one there. And let's see, we want to get something here. And maybe we'll go and just really emphasize that turquoise. Oh, look, here's a good turquoise. This will be a fun one to put in there. I like that. And here, I think I may go with some of these subtler. I have some of these like watercolors, which I may use. I'm not real sure. But, ooh, I kind of like this one. You know, if that weren't the same fabric design, I would use it, even though it's a different color. But I don't really like that because those stripes, just too much. Oh, you know what? But that works well here. Okay, so I just need one more for this guy. I think I found the perfect one for this. We'll add that there. And now we're going to go with some light fabrics. Because this is a particularly light block, I want to make the highlight fabric be even lighter than that. So I'm just going to go for low volume. I'll take one right off the top. And let's see, there's a couple here that I like that I want to try and put in here. And these, yeah, these three would be good. So, ooh, I don't like that. That doesn't work. I just thought with those greens that might work in there. But actually that works pretty nice with those. And here, this has got the little bit of green in there. See that? And I think, yeah, see, that works really well. And this is just light blue, and I think that'll work out nicely. So then what I do, now that I have this all set, I'm going to go ahead and create my 4 patches. And while I'm doing that, I just want to explain that by going through your fabrics in a manner like this, that you divide them into your light, medium, and dark, and then place them throughout your quilt in a, shall we say, a random, a random organized, a random plan, so to speak. It just works really well because I like the look of having the 4 blocks together. Number one, it makes your quilting go a lot faster. The block, the sewing comes together so much easier this way because now I'm just going to stack these into a pile like this. And I'm just going to chain piece everything. And once it's chain pieced, all I have to do is I'll cut 4 apart. I'll sew those together. Once everything's pressed, then I have a stack of 4 patch blocks that I can use to put my quilt together. And even better because each block is balanced in its the value and the tones and the colors. That way, when I put these blocks side by side, I can turn them, which I absolutely will, but I'm going to get really good balance throughout the entire quilt. Now, I did mention that I will turn these because if I put every block in the quilt in this same direction, this light and this dark is going to create almost a diagonal pattern. That may be a good thing. I don't want that. I want it to be more random. So let me go ahead and sew these and I'll show you how that can work out. All my 4 patches are sewn together and pressed, and I think they look wonderful. Now what I do want to show you is I chained stitched these together and then I folded it over and made one seam and pressed it. And this seam you may have to press one way or the other depending on how your blocks go. And I just want to show you that at this point, the fun part is kind of turning things every which way, but that's kind of repetitive. I don't want to do that. So here we go. I'll put that this way. And let's see, put that there and this one like that. Now, when you look at this, you don't see a particular pattern. You see a mix of lights and darks and medium color fabrics, and it works really well. And this is great for a scrappy quilt. That's what makes it a lot of fun because you can mix all kinds of colors, but as long as you balance your lights and darks, you're going to get a good contrast. You're going to get a lot of color that works well together. But let me show you the quilt that I made out of this pattern. It's absolutely adorable. This is a picture of a 4-patch that I did in a baby quilt size. And you can see each 4-patch how the balance of colors. So they have a dark and light and mediums. And, you know, the light and the medium are together here. the light and the darker side by side, so you can mix it up as you put your blocks together. But you'll notice just how easily this all goes together, and it looks great. You don't see repetitive colors next to each other. It balances out, and I really like how this pattern works with just about any colors or fabrics that I've used. So you can get this free pattern for this quilt down below, and it explains the 4-patch process, and then you can determine the size you want if you want it bigger just by adding more charm squares. But this is a great quilt to start with. It goes super easy. Our second charm square quilt is going to be another 4-patch, but we're going to do it a little differently. We make it the exact same way. We press every block in the same way, and that way we can place them in the quilt easily and consistently so that everything looks nice pieced together. But what we're going to do between our blocks is add an alternate large square. When we're using charm squares and make a 4-patch, these squares are going to finish at 4.5 each, which means this block will be 9 inches. So we want to make sure we cut it to 9.5. And that's what this then is, would be a 9.5, and then we piece it, and there's our quilt. But what I want to show you is just how awesome this looks when you do the alternating block like that. So you're really only making half as many 4-patches as you otherwise would in your quilt, because you're going to use a single larger square in between. And this can be coordinating yardage that you buy. This can be stash fabric. Perhaps like for this, because there's so much pink and green and light blue, if you had some pastels, you could use pastel colors in here. Or maybe in your 4-patch, you can use some pastels and use some of these colors as your alternate. However you do it, just keep in mind you can always utilize your blocks a little more efficiently with some alternates in between, because that gives you the extra blocks with much less effort. And if you need to get a quilt finished fast, that's one of the best ways I know, is to go ahead and make yourself a 4-patch and surround it with alternating blocks, and then you have a beautiful quilt. And let me show you what this quilt looks like. Here it is right here. Let me just open it up. This is such a pretty quilt. I will get a picture for you here in just a moment of the quilt completely open. The camera won't get the whole thing on the screen. But look at how wonderful those blocks look. So we have our 4-patches, we have our alternating, and so you get this diagonal pattern of not only the 4-patches, but also your alternating solid blocks. So you can do so much with this, especially if you have colors. If you want to work with colors too, these rows can all be a little bit different. Or like I said, color these in pastels. Maybe these are going to be the light, and then you put maybe some pinks and greens, and then you have this great little charm where diagonal working across your quilt. It's just so pretty to incorporate other fabrics in a different manner to enhance the colors in your quilt and the blocks that you're making, but it also can be so much quicker to finish a quilt. So this is one I want you to remember. Now let me show you a picture of this in its full size. And here's the quilt finished. I think it looks wonderful. The larger squares between the 4-patches looks great. And we get the fun prints, the pretty florals in there, which makes me happy. And like I said, you can do this with any kind of fabrics, any prints that you have, and it would work great with scrappy fabrics too. So just keep that in mind when you need a quick quilt, and this is a great opportunity for you to try a new 4-patch quilt with only half the work, which is the best part. I even have some more blocks. I have enough for another row or two, I think. So I'll be making this one a bit bigger. But in the meantime, you enjoy. I hope you get to try one of these. Now let's go back to these original charms and take a look at a third option and see what we can do with a 9 patch. Again, we're using 5-inch squares, so there's no cutting. We're going to use them just as they come out of the charm pack, unless you cut your own 5-inch or you happen to have a stash full of 5-inch squares. We start with the middle and surround them with 9 blocks. Or excuse me, surround them with 8 blocks because we're making a 9 patch. So let's go ahead and I'm going to use this in the center right there. And then I'm just going to start selecting fabrics and putting them in different places. And we'll put some darks and we'll get some other darks. And let's see, let's get a dark one down at the bottom. And I want some more light ones. And let's see, what else do we have? Get some other colors in here. I like this because the green turquoise works really well there. And let's see, ooh, I kind of like this one, I think, just to bring in some bright color. But you know, yeah, there we go. Okay, when we've got a couple lighter ones in here, that works really well. So here we go. We have a 9 patch. Now, you make a bunch of these and you've got a quilt before you know it. So they're each 5 inches. They finish at 4.5. So those two are 9 plus 4.5 this is a 13.5-inch block, and that goes a long ways. That'll make a 40-inch quilt before you know it. And it looks wonderful. It's a great way to put your fabrics together. Now, if you want to make it a little lighter in color so it's not quite so dark, then take out maybe some of your darkest fabrics and put in a low volume. Now, I don't want them to be diagonal, because if I do this, I don't want to have a diagonal pattern. Now, you certainly can if that's what you want to go with. But, you know, put this in here and it sort of lightens up the whole block. And then when you're piecing them together, you turn them, you know, every which way and they look beautiful. This is a great way to do a quilt. Now, one of the ways I worked with this was to make a 9 patch, but then I put a sashing around each of my blocks. So let me show you what that looks like. And I have that one right here. And it is absolutely beautiful. Again, with the vintage. These are just some vintage quilts that I made. And again, I didn't want to cut the fabric up too much. So that's why I use these kind of patterns. If there's fabric you want to keep the integrity of it without cutting it up, this is a great way to do it. The 4 patch and the 9 patch, because then you can keep your squares in their 5-inch and let them just look beautiful all together. But look at this. So we have a 9 patch here, and the balance between the darks and the mediums and the lights with a very light center. So every one of them has a light center. And I did, on this one in particular, try and make sure that I had a blue flower in the center of each. Let me show you on this side. And here's some more. But I love how a 9 patch looks. Aren't these wonderful? Of course, I love these vintage fabrics. Oh, my goodness. I have I go to Vintage Fabric Studio and either on the online or at Etsy.com. And she just has some beautiful fabrics. I'll go ahead and add her link down below. But just the way you can incorporate a beautiful collection of charm squares just by keeping a consistent color or block in the middle, that gives you so much freedom to do a lot more with your quilting. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like in its entirety. It's a beauty. And here's the finished 9 patch. And you'll notice that every 9 patch has the same center or the same fabric. It's not exactly the same print because it changes, obviously. But this is a wonderful way to make a quick quilt. Is you use that common center, it ties everything together, and surround it with charm squares of varying prints. And another shortcut is to add sashing. And this sashing is the same width as the charm square. It finishes at 4.5 inches. So you get that extra, well, 9 inches in the middle of the quilt, and then you add a border, and this goes really fast. This is perfect for a scrappy quilt, filled with tons of fabrics and color. Oh, I love it. But it's also something that can be done in a much more structured design, where you perhaps choose colors or patterns or whatever the case is that you like in particular. But this is a great quilt to try. For number 4, we have another 9 patch. What I want to show you with this, though, is I use a specific number of lighter fabrics. So I have my focal fabrics and a few dark fabrics, but I make sure I put it anywhere from 2 to 3 low volume or very light highlight fabrics. And it just lightens up your quilt dramatically. So I've got all my fabrics in here, and I do not keep a consistent color in the center. This could be one of the low volumes or the highlight fabrics, or it could be one of my darkest fabrics. But either way, I just want all this color to kind of blend together with these highlighted or these highlight fabrics being in sporadic places in the block. And it works out beautifully. And again, I lay them out and I just start, shuffling out my charm squares, put them in a 9 patch, and then I go to the machine and do my chain stitching. So let me show you how this quilt turns out. Oh my goodness, it is so much fun. This is one of the best scrappy projects you can do. Now, for example, let's see, right here, look at this 9 patch. Can you see that from here to here? So we have one of the darkest fabrics in the center, and then we have our light ones. I have 3 in this block, but the other colors, they're all mix and match. There's no color coordination. There's no color pattern by any means. They all just sort of kind of fall together. Again, with this one. And I have the 3 lighter fabrics, but I have quite a few dark ones in here in just one of the highlight fabrics. And I think that works great. And you can see on this one, very similar. Now, I only used 1 here and used the rest and let them be all dark, but look at how that works together. You see how these colors kind of just randomly fall, but these lighter colors really brighten up your quilt. So let's turn it over to the other side and take a look here. And again, so there, I don't leave anything out. I just pull all my scraps together. And I do try not to duplicate a fabric pattern, even if it's in a different color, and I try not to duplicate the color too much. Now, this is a bright yellow and this is gold. So they're far enough apart, and the pattern highlights different colors so that they work well together and they don't look too matchy-matchy. But we've got our highlights there. Now look at this one. Here we have our 9 patch, and we have 3 of the light fabrics. And again, and look at all the patterns. Look at all these different patterns mixed in together, but they look great. There's no conflict or any heartache looking at these going, oh my gosh, those don't go together. They don't look right, but they look beautiful and they're just perfect. And again, here's another one. So this one had a light one in the middle, and that just works out fine because we're going to have other lights throughout, but this one is the dark in the middle. And again, when you spread this out and look at it all together, you see what I mean about how everything just sort of blends and works well. You don't know it's a 9 patch. You certainly can't look and say, oh, look, that's a 9 patch or that's a 9 patch. And that's the beauty of this. This is a scrappy quilt. You can put together in 9 patches, so you can do it as you have time. And then when you have enough of them, which this is 3 across, and this makes a very wide quilt, which is, well, not wide, but like a wide baby quilt. So I guess what I'm saying is it goes together quickly. It gets wide fast. And then once you've got a stack of them together, you just start sewing them together. And before you know it, you have a quilt. And it's beautiful using all those favorite fabrics in your charm packs that you wanted to use. And you've got a beautiful quilt as a result, and you've used your fabrics, and now you have time to go and buy more. Yay! That's always the good part when you finish a quilt. So I'm going to get a photo of this for you too, so you can see it in its entirety. I think you'll really like it. Just look at all those wonderful colors, and we have the lighter fabrics kind of mixed in throughout. Do you see the big difference between this and the previous 9 patch? Look, each 9 patch has 1, 2, or 3 of the light fabrics. Ooh, that one actually has 4. This one has a single one. And what that does is balance the quilt out while not creating a specific grid pattern. Like the previous one, we had the 9 patch with the common center. Every center had that white block, which is fine, and that's what we wanted in that particular quilt. But if you want to go scrappy and you want to put a ton of fabrics together, this is the way to go. So pull all those charm squares that are left over from other projects and whatever scraps you can, manage to get a few more 5-inch squares out of, and pull some light highlights. Whether it can all be the same color, you can get just a solid white or a solid light color. But again, I love low volume. I just think they add so much more to a quilt. Their patterns and design within the fabric is just so attention-getting. I love it. But this is a great scrappy pattern. I hope you get to give it a try. Just to keep things interesting, I couldn't help but to also show you this quilt. This is another 9 patch. Now, who would think this is the same quilt? Let me show you this other block. So when you look at this and you see a 9 patch and it's filled with all different colors and lights and darks, and you look at this quilt and you think, there's nothing similar about that. How can they possibly be the same? Well, they are. We've got a 9 patch right here, and I have essentially, I don't want to say 2 fabrics, but 2 styles of fabrics. I have 1K facet print that had lots of colors. These are the, oh my goodness, the peonies. What's the word? The brocade peonies, I think is what they're called. And I love the colors in them, and they're just great big huge flowers, and they're beautiful. And then I have some Allie K black and white prints. Her fabrics are fabulous, and they are just so perfect with these florals. And what I did is, let me just open this up here. So we have a 9 patch here, and here's another 9 patch. The way I put this one together was a little different. I layered all the fabrics together, and I had them, I'm trying to think, so it was in a 9 patch, so I had 5, 10, 15, so there are 15-inch blocks, and I just stacked them up, and then I cut them into the 5-inch squares. But then what I did is, keeping them in the same order, I took the top one off and put it under, then I took 2 off and put it under, 3 off and put it under, so that it mixed up all the fabrics as I sewed them. Oh my goodness, look at these. Aren't they fabulous? I love this quilt. Can you tell? Oh, and it's just wonderful. So I just want you to see what you can do. I mean, you may have a preconceived notion of what a 9 patch is, and I'm here to tell you it can be a whole lot more. So I will include the link for this down below so you can watch how this process is done for this particular block, and I'm going to show you a picture of the whole thing in its entirety. It's a pretty one. I love it. It's hard to believe these 2 quilts are made in the exact same manner. 9 patches, and all we have are basically the black and whites and our print, and they're just spread out everywhere, and they look wonderful. There's actually a technique that I used when I made this quilt that might be interesting to you to watch, and it's just fun because it's a stack and sort. So you stack all your fabrics, and then you sort of sort them out and change them around, and then just start randomly sewing them, and they look beautiful. But essentially this is like a 2-color quilt. We have our floral, and then we have our black and white, and it just looks wonderful together. Oh my goodness, this has been a fun quilt to make. And it shows you how versatile a 9-patch quilt can be. Well, the first 4 quilts we've looked at, those blocks don't require any cutting of your charm squares. It's just the manner in which you piece them, and you create a beautiful block to make an entire quilt with. That's wonderful. Sometimes it's fun to just get in there and start piecing things and putting them together, cutting them apart, and making something new. And that's what I want to show you here. We're going to start with our lightest. So we're going to use the low volume. And then we're going to choose, basically we're going to separate our piles at this point into dark and light. And that's pretty much the way that this is going to go. So I'm going to get 3 of my dark ones across the top. And let's see, we'll put this one, oh, we haven't done this one yet. We'll put this one in, and then let's get a nice dark one. Okay, so we have those there. Now we're going to go into our mediums, and I want to use something on the lighter side, and then I want to get something sort of in the middle, and then let's something sort of in a greenish, not too dark color. Oh yeah, I like this one. I just love these fern prints. All right, so I am going to take these and show you how we are going to make a, I don't want to say the word because people get turned off by the word rail fence. There are a lot of folks that don't like that, but I'm going to show you how a rail fence can be absolutely beautiful and unrecognizable as a rail fence. So let me go ahead and get this sewn up, and I'm going to show you what we'll do. Now, quilt number 5 is very easy to make. It's just a matter of joining 2 charm squares together, right sides together, and you sew a 1/4 inch down each side. And that's it. Now, the first tip I want to give you about this, when you sew a 1/4 inch here, and then you turn it over and sew a 1/4 inch here, you have to be careful when you press it, because when you do that second seam, if this fabric isn't laying exactly flat, you're going to get a little poof on one side or the other. When you go to press it, you're going to get a crease along that seam. So one of 2 things. If you do go through and sew both seams, press one and then the other. Don't go all the way across, because if there's any excess fabric, it's going to bunch up on your seam and give you a crease. Alternatively, what I do is I'll sew everything along one side, and then I'll put it on the ironing board and I'll press it from the seam side to this side here. Then I can just go through and sew everything, and it's nice and flat and square. I don't have to worry about it, so that's really great. That's one thing to keep in mind. Now, the way we are going to, I can't figure out where I am on this this grid. Okay, there we go. And I have a little bit of a twist in my block there. Okay, there we are. So I'm going to cut them right down the center. And what I'll do is I'll put it within the 5-inch block and cut it at 2.5. I rather do it that way than just measure 2.5 inches from the outer edge, because sometimes if I'm in a hurry, you can see my charm square may not be exactly the right size. So if I put this in my 5-inch and I center it where it needs to be, and if I have to, I'll put those seams on the 1/4 inch mark, and then I know that I'm good, and I'll get a nice even block out of this. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then what I'll do is I'll press these to the darker side. I'm just going to finger press them for now, just to show this demonstration. So you get 2 of this and you get 2 of this. But of course we want a lot more than just these few colors, because we are going to have a quilt filled with all kinds of blue fabric. So I have these and I have some of these. So let's get a block put together. What we want to do is put a light and a dark together. And so this one is on the darker side, and this is lighter than that one. And this one is on the darker side, and I think I like, that's dark, I think I'll go with this one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put, well, let's just make up a section of them since we have 4 more. And I'm going to put this one here with this one and this one here with this one. Okay, so I'm going to sew these together. I'm going to just put them right sides together so I know what I'm sewing. And then I'll be right back and I'll show you how this block goes together. It's fun. And my blocks, my 2 rails, are all sewn together. And I have a dark and a light, dark, light. So the key is that you have a contrast. Now, watch how this works. This is just such fun. We're going to have everything pressed to the darker edge. And I'm going to turn this around this way and this around this way. So here we have nesting seams because of the way it's pressed. We're good there. So there's one block, and we do the same thing here. We have nested seams. It looks beautiful. And there we are. And that's how we make our blocks. And this is what it looks like. So everything's pressed on each side. We have one seam down the middle. And again, this is maybe pressed one way or the other depending on how all your blocks go. And you can choose how you want to put this together. Now, given that we have these 2 dark ones, we can put this in the middle. Did I sew this one backwards? Oh my goodness, look at what I did. I sewed this backwards. Okay, so don't do it that way. What I did was this way. So just be consistent. Okay, so I'm going to do it this way. Whatever you do with the first one, you make sure you do with the rest of them. There we go. And if I tuck this way, that'll get those dark ones away from each other, like this. Okay. And we'll put this one in the middle. I'm actually going to turn it this way. And there we are. So it looks great. Now, obviously, you want to use a lot of colors so you don't get too much repetition, but I just wanted to show you how easy this is. Simply sewing 2 charm squares down the side, cutting down the middle. And you get these great blocks with some wonderful contrast. You put them together and you just start sewing. And then essentially what you've created is a 4-patch. And you can make it bigger. So if you want to put your quilt together with 4 patches and then sew it all together, or make this a double 4-patch, which would end, be 4 by 4 with 16 of these blocks in here. So there's so much you can do with this, and it is a very quick and easy quilt. It's a lot of fun. So I have 2 different finished quilts I want to show you, and I think you're really going to like that. You'll see the similarity between this quilt with the fabrics used and the demonstration one that I did today on this video. The difference, though, is that these are white as opposed to the low volume that I used. And I think that makes kind of a nice difference. It's just a little different look. I love the white against the dark blues because it really stands out in a bold way and you get that great contrast. But on the other, with the low volume, it's not quite so stark. And it's just a matter of what you prefer and what you want to go with, what kind of quilt you want it to look like, etc. So it's all about personal taste. Now this one I did pretty monochromatic. It's all done in blues of varying shades. But I love the way that we get that step, the offset between each of these rectangles. So you can tell that they're not a square. These are definitely a longer rectangle than they are wide. So that makes a bit of a difference. by doing that, all our rails are going to be vertical. Had we trimmed this off, we could alternate and turn them in different directions, but I really like this look, and this is a fun rail fence. Now, let me show you how the other one looks. When you look at this one, you don't really even realize it's the same pattern. Using a patterned fabric for the background on this is such a great opportunity to put in a bold punch of color. Now, this was a K-Facet charm square pack that I had, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But I noticed that just about every block, every square had a little bit of a turquoise blue aqua kind of a color. And I thought, okay, there we go. And this is a batik with all different shades of the same color, which is awesome. And plus you get the pattern of the petals, and it just creates a beautiful look. I love this quilt. I think it's wonderful. So the next time you want to make a charm square quilt, think of this. You'll love it. We're on number 6, and I'm going to go to a different selection of fabrics here. And what we're going to do is pair our light and dark blue with our focal fabric, with our print. So I will go ahead and, let's see, we'll go 1, 2, 3 of each. Oh, these didn't all get pressed. I promise I'll press them before I get to sewing. They were kind of tucked in a box and their corners turned up. Okay, so actually, you know what? I'm going to go with 4 of each of these just to make sure I have enough. There we go. So these 4, I'm going to use this color. I'll use the darker blue. And with these up here, I'll use the lighter blue. And I wonder if you have an idea yet just what I'm going to make with these. Give me a minute and I'll show you. And these blocks are sewn just like the 2 rail quilt was. And the blocks are sewn down each side, 2 right sides together. And now I'm going to cut them right down the middle in half. And then we're going to start piecing our block. This one's going to be a bit different, so don't go far. Once the blocks are cut apart, we sewed them down both sides, cut them down the middle, and then we want to press. And everything is pressed to the print fabric. And then we're going to put a light and a dark together, but notice how they're offset. So it's corner to corner. And then we're going to sew down one side. We're going to chain stitch and sew the next block. Then we'll turn around, come the other way, and then we'll finish with this one here. And once these are all sewn together, this is what we have. So again, we're back with our 2 seams down each side. And you want to make sure that those seams are going in the opposite direction of the horizontal seam. You don't want to be sewing this way because you're going to come up with something completely different. So what we're going to do now is cut this in half again. There's a little bit of extra cutting here, just working on the other side. And we're just sort of doubling up on what we did. But the beauty of this is now we have a 4 patch. And this is so much easier than cutting all those 2.5-inch squares and sewing them together. And look at those points in there. The secret to that is sewing these end to end. So we have our 2 blocks and we press them towards the print so that when we join these together and we nest those seams, see how well that fits? And you sew it on this side and you sew it on this side, and then you're going to sew it cut it right down the center. And we are going to get a beautiful 4 patch. But it's a little 4 patch. The other 4 patches that we started with were all the 5-inch squares. These would be equivalent to like a 2.5-inch because they're going to finish at 2-inch. But these are awesome. And so now I'm going to cut all these apart and I'll show you some ideas of what we can do with this and how we can create a quilt out of these blocks. And with everything cut and pressed, we have some beautiful 4-patch blocks. And one of the most common ways to put these together is just quite simply stack them and sew them in rows like this. And you can see how your print becomes a diagonal. Now, what you can do is alternate these. See how we can then create a diagonal. Let's see, goes this way. So that's good. That's blue. And this one needs to be blue this way. Okay, there we go. So now all our colors are in a diagonal pattern. Now, the other thing, and see, this is just pretty because you get the triple rail. So this is like the Irish chain is what this block is. And it's great fun, and it's something that you can put together in a block, either a 4-patch or a 9-patch like this, and then stack them together and turn them. So let's say you wanted to go this direction. So that, let's see, so that our blocks go in a diagonal pattern. So we want that to be there and this to be here. And you see how we're now creating a diagonal. Let's see, this is going to go like that. So we have kind of this pattern going together where we have a double and then it comes out, a double and it comes out like that. And it's just a fun way to mix up a lot of fabrics, whether you do it just sort of with a few fabrics like this and put it together, or do it in a scrappy method and then line these blocks up maybe by color or print or background, whatever it is you like. But this is a lot of fun to do. The other thing is when you do something like this, you can put this block in between and kind of go like this and bring this down here. And so what you're doing is offsetting, but you want to continue that pattern. So you want to go this way, but we want it to go like that. Or no, I like it actually if it alternates. So where we've got blue and the light blue, then we'll put the dark blue here. And you see how we're creating this. See, that's going to go this way, I think. See how we're creating a different kind of a diagonal pattern. And we want to go this way. I like having them opposite, I think. I don't know. I just can't decide. But see, that's the thing. You can decide how you prefer it. And maybe this is a better way to do it, because then those make a more of a statement. They become more visible, which is pretty darn cool. So I like this. This is a lot of fun. And I'm not quite sure which way this is going to go. There we are. This is a wonderful pattern. This is a wonderful block that you can do so much with. And I hope you give it a try. You saw how easy this was to put together. And here's a quilt with a 4-patch alternating with a charm square. And don't you just love that diagonal? Oh my goodness, it is beautiful. And it just is so bright and colorful. There's lots of fall russet brown, tan, green colors in here, some golds and terracottas. but then that bright turquoise just stands out so amazingly bright, and it just brings that quilt so much color, and it just screams out, hey, look at me, I love it. So it is a fun quilt, and there is a tutorial down below on the 4-patch block so that you get all those details. So don't miss that. Number 7 will start much like the last quilt did, in that we pair up 2 contrasting charm squares, but then we're going to sew it a little bit differently. What I'm going to do is trade in my 5-inch squares in dark blue for a 5-inch square in dark blue with a diagonal line across it. I don't know how well this is going to come out on the camera, only because it's white chalk, and while it does contrast enough for me to see it while I sew, it can be hard, to see this way. Let's see if I put this up. Can you see? There it is. We can almost see it right there across the line. These will be easier. So what we're going to do is draw a line from corner to corner, and we're going to sew on each side of that line 1/4 inch seam allowance, or just less, but not more. It really is okay if you go more or less, but it's going to adjust the size of your half square triangle. If some are more and some are less, when you trim them, you're going to be doing more trimming to keep them all the same size. Half square triangles get joined to other blocks in your quilt. Sometimes it's another half square triangle. Sometimes it might just be another, charm square. But whatever the case may be, they need to be consistent. So the better you are at being consistent with your seam allowance, the better you'll get consistent results in your finished half square triangles, and you're going to get beautiful blocks that go together fabulously well. So let me go ahead and switch these out, and I'll show you what's coming up next. And these blocks have been sewn, and you see the diagonal line with a nice straight stitch on each side. You want to make sure that that's even, because that's how you're going to get your straight diagonal on your half square triangle. So once we do the sewing, we're going to come in and cut along the line. And let me get right on there. There's that one and this one. And then what I did on these is I pressed them all towards the printed fabric. And so everything is pressed the same way. So I went ahead and pressed like this. So let me show you what we have here. We have some half square triangles. Now before we sew them, they need to be trimmed. I haven't done the trimming yet, but they're in really good shape as far as being nice and square, because I did the corner to corner, I did the straight seam allowance. There will be a little bit of trimming around the edges, but it shouldn't be too much. Another very popular pattern with the half square triangle is the chevron. It's something that you do see a lot of, and it's fun to do in a lot of different sizes. I've made them with really large blocks, large half square triangles, and they really look terrific. But this is just a fun way to put your quilt together. Let's see, we need to go like this and just kind of get that pattern going. And when you use 2 different backgrounds, you get this great ripple effect that's beautiful. I love it. But the other thing we can do, let's see, we can make a square and a square. Let's try that. So we need a white one here, like that. And this needs to be a white one. And this is a white one. So you see how we're going around here and just creating this square, and then we can come out, and I don't have enough of the various colors, but what we can do is you'll see how this works, and you see how we get that next line in place, in order to make a larger square. So we have a point and we have a point. They look like flying geese. So we'll put this one up here like that, and then we're going to come down this way. So again, we've got the point and the point. So it's just fun to lay it out and see what you can come up with. So another fun one is to take these and turn them around. And let's see, we have to go this way. And let's use the white ones. Let's see, it's not working. There it is. Okay, got to get it turned around. So basically, we're just turning these in a different direction to get star points. You see how that works? Let's see, this way, and then this one goes this way. And then we would just put our dark ones in the corner and pull that out. But see, we can do this and make a star. But what I want to do is switch this out here and maybe go this way. That way we get more contrast. Yeah, see, I like that better because there was too much of the dots all together. So this is another fun one. I do have a half square triangle star quilt that I want to show you. And again, there are tutorial links on how to do all these different blocks and putting them together. So I'll make sure that's linked down below. There are so many different ways to arrange your half square triangle quilt. The design options are endless. There's just so many to choose from, and every one of them is beautiful. And when you mix all these colors together and, create your various designs, it's a lot of fun to do, and it's absolutely beautiful. These quilts are stunning. And I had fun doing it with low volume. There I am. I love my low volume fabrics. And I think it just offsets those bright blues so very, very well. I'm really, really happy with this quilt. And be sure you get that tutorial down below. Now we're going to take a look at quilt number 8. And it is a combination of a few different blocks. Let me think. So this is going to be blue and blue here and here. And we are going to get our corners in. I just haven't decided which way the blue and light blue will go. So this will go like this. Actually, let me move this up there. And then here, we're going to use our 4 patch, and we're going to bring that out to the side. Actually, no, I'm going to put it this way, like this, which means I think I want to do that. And then we'll put the white ones in the middle. There we go. That's kind of fun. And make a white diamond in here. And continue with our 4 patch and just bring it back in the other direction. So what we're doing here is creating a big diamond, so to speak. So see how we do want to keep our whites, our blues, however it's going to go together. We just want to be consistent. And so we're going to go ahead and put this white one here. But if we've got a blue center, or white center, we probably want to have blue all the way around. What do you think? But we can play with this and make it be whatever we want. And then now I'm going to put this in the middle. So what I want to show you is, so here's a block right here. And when we make multiples of these and put it next to it, where we have this white block here, we're going to have the polka dot block over here. So it's going to create a secondary pattern, and a block like this would be gorgeous to put into a large quilt. And you can change the colors around and really do a lot of fun things with this particular pattern. This is something I'm thinking about making a table runner with, and I just haven't quite completely decided how I want to do this block layout and how I'm going to put them all together. So that's going to be the next challenge. But I do have one last block that I want to show you. And we have our quarter square triangle. We lined our seams up, and I just put a pin in here. So as I'm sewing, I'm going to have that held together, and I'll make sure on this other side that everything is nice and straight, and you get some great corners in there. So once this is done and you go in and you double check and make sure everything looks good, then go ahead and cut. And we're going to cut right down the center. Let me do it where I can see the line. And there we go. So there's those, and here's the line here. I was afraid I'm going to cut on the sewing, the seam that I made instead of the actual line. But look at this. Oh, I just think these are wonderful. You know, it's not something that I use a lot, and I need to, and that part of why I wanted to do this is so that I could, you know, kind of come up with an idea of how to incorporate them into my quilts. So, you know, I like the idea perhaps of alternating, and you see if you do this, then we get these fun little squares. So we get blue squares, and then we get our print squares, and then we'd have the light ones. So there's quite a bit that we can do, and I'm realizing how long this video is. If you're still here with me, thank you so much. This has been a lot of information, and it's been a lot more than I thought it would be. I didn't think it would take this long, so thanks for hanging in there. But it's been so much fun. I have enjoyed all this immensely, and I hope it's been helpful to you, and I hope that you're going to get excited about making some charm square quilts. And check the links down below and all the information that's out there. There's some free downloads, some helpful information. And we have got some ideas to put together now that we can make some fantastic quilts. So thanks again for being here. And as always, it's my pleasure to spend some time with you. Have a fantastic rest of your day.